Welcome to the latest instant reaction podcast. Then the Seahawks moved to 5-0 after beating the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football. An incredible game. Lots to get into. Robbie, first of all, your instant reaction. How do you feel after watching that?
Yeah, my instant reaction is just, man, I don't even know. Like, I'm just like a big, deep sigh of relief. I mean, it's a game we shouldn't have won, and we did. We pulled it out. And, man, I'm stressed out, like sweating. I'm a mess right now.
I think the strange thing is it's we should be used to this by now. You know, we've had 10 years of these dramatic games that just, you know, Pete Carroll in this era of Seahawks football, they've just found so many different ways to win a game. You know, I was actually just taking a moment after the game to think about all of the unusual endings, you know, the Fail Mary, for example, or the end of the NFC Championship game when Kaepernick throws it and it ends up being tipped. You know, the Green Bay NFC game, and, you know, and then there's all the little games that you sort of forget about, the overtime wins, or, you know, just the goal line stop in 2013 against the Rams. There were just this great big lot. We've had two already this year. This great big long list of games that just end differently every time, that you kind of feel like you've witnessed something new every single time. And it does kind of help you realize that you're alive, but it also ages you at the same time, Robbie.
That's one of the great things about this game, though, too. I mean, man, how fun is it? I mean, it can, you know, as much as, you know, it's 100 yards and same amount of people on the field, it's still different every game. And I just lose my voice every time. I mean, that's why we watch.
If you were a fan of another team, I mean, if you follow the NFL very closely and you watch, for example, every Sunday night game, if you're well up on the teams who have played well in the league, you know, imagine being a fan of the Bengals, for example, and sort of looking at the Seahawks fans right now and thinking, you know, why can't we have some of that? Because as torturous and as painful as some of these games can be with the way that they go right down to the wire, it could go either way. You're very stressed. You know, I'm pacing watching that. But that's so that moment of euphoria at the end. And even when they've lost games, I mean, this was very similar to the Niners game, I thought, at the end of last year, where San Francisco were the dominant team. They absolutely dominated that game. They had no business losing that game. And yet the Seahawks nearly won with a fourth down throw as time sort of almost expires. I mean, it's practically the same game, except this time with the right result for Seattle. And, you know, for me, there's a lot of flaws with this team, Robbie, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit about them in this podcast. But to be 5-0, to have sat through another crazy Pete Carroll night of football, to have Russell Wilson go and deliver, what was it, a 94-yard drive, I think, in the end, to go and do that off the back of the stop at the end. I mean, they stopped Mattison about an inch short of the line, which would have ended the game at that point. That would have been it, over. They make the stop, which gives Wilson the opportunity to go on that drive. The drive itself is weird because it's raining. Russell's struggling. It's a throw the ball. I mean, it's coming out funky. The fourth down, the heave downfield, and DK somehow comes up with it. You've got the plays at the end where it falls through DK's hands, and they give it a touchdown, and they wipe it off. And just everything about it, Robbie. The throw at the end is into such a tight window. It's a great catch from Metcalf. I mean, just everything about it. It's another unique, brilliant win.
Yeah, and, you know, you mentioned, like, being a fan of, like, the Bengals, and, you know, man, if I was a fan of the Vikings, I'm sure I'd be pissed about not going for the field goal, right? As a Seahawks fan, go for the win. Hopefully we'll get the stop. But, I mean, it's the right call. I totally agreed with. I mean, I didn't agree with much that Chris Collinsworth said tonight, but I feel like it was the right call that to go for that right there. I mean, you know, you've been running it down our throats all night, 200 plus yards running. Give it to your guys and let them go try to win the football game, and, you know, hope then back in on your defense and hope that they can win the game. But, man, it was so fun. I'm really happy to be 5-0. And if you look at it, you know, if I think about it in terms of being, you know, at the beginning of the year, if you would have said we were 5-0, I wouldn't have cared how we got there as long as we were 5-0. And, you know, there's a lot to nitpick on this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But right now, our offense, I mean, if we could have had this offense in 2014, 2013, I mean, we would just been unstoppable. So I feel really good about our offense, and, you know, hopefully our defense can start picking some things up.
Yeah, I don't think it was even just the defense today. I thought there were some serious issues in both trenches. I think there are some concerns to go out this game, but I also think, you know, it's you almost kind of just want to park it for a bit. That's kind of how I feel tonight. When you watch something like that, my God, there are some really serious issues with this team that we saw tonight. But to win in that fashion, and on the whole, should Zimmer have gone for it or not? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. I know people are very tied to the analytics and doing what the numbers say, and they showed it on the screen, didn't they? That the numbers suggest it was the right thing to do. I think personally, I'd rather have the 8-point cushion. I would rather be saying, okay, we've got an 8-point cushion, make them go and get 6 and a 2-point conversion and 75 yards in order to do that, rather than sort of having one play. If you make it, then Russell Wilson can drive to win the game, as opposed to driving to tie the game. I mean, at that point, Wilson is driving to tie. And you may have a bit of time left, I don't know, to try and get the field goal, even if he does tie. Whatever. So you could second guess it forever, couldn't you? The Seahawks have won the 5-0. We start with positives and negatives. I think the positives, Robbie, obviously the final drive. Russell Wilson, before that final drive, that was going to be a massive stalling of his MVP momentum. It was going to be potentially a game where people start gravitating towards Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, if he plays well in his next game. That finally play that Bills-Titans game, and Mahomes and Lamar and people like that, they would have got a lot of attention this week if Wilson had not had that final drive, because he didn't play well. He does not play well in the rain. It worries me still, even though we're like 9 years into his career, because it rains a lot in Seattle. And, we've seen the Packers game in 2014 is a classic example. If the weather's crap, he can be really off. And this is a team that relies on him being on it every week. Scoreboard pressure, help the defense. And we saw tonight, when you don't have that, what can happen. But, it almost helps his MVP. That everything that went wrong kind of helps the MVP race now, because he had that one drive. That one drive just masks everything. The terrible interception, the inability to move the ball in the first half, everything that was wrong in the first half, everything that was wrong after they took the lead and couldn't move the ball and create drives after that, all wiped away because of one 94-yard drive. And now he leaves this game, I suppose, still as the front runner.
Yeah, for me, the most, I'll start with my positives. Positives, I think on the defensive side as well, I think KJ Wright played a really good game. Obviously, he was all over. That interception was incredible. He's a bright spot. And I know DK had that drop in the end zone, but man, that guy he is a number one receiver. He is an absolute beast. And, I'll take those drops when he can still pull off a game winner like that, or, running down the sideline and making a huge catch, or whatever the case might be. And he almost got that one that Russell just hucked up, and he was just trying to run underneath it. I mean, he's that fast. He's that big. He's that explosive. He has the ability. So for me, he was another huge positive. And, the other, I'm hesitant to go super positive, but I can clearly see a difference between Dunbar and Flowers. When Dunbar went off the field again, there was a big just shift in the way I felt like Flowers played. And I still really like Trey Flowers. I think he has potential. He's been getting picked on a lot, but I think he still needs a little more grooming. But you can definitely see Dunbar makes better plays, and he just seems to be in a better position all around when he's in. So for me, positive was Quentin Dunbar when he was actually in the game.
See, I think with the DK ones, I think the one in the end zone in the end, I think the defender played that well. I don't know if he got a hand on it. I can't remember. So much has happened. Well, they've got a little fingertips to it, which it was a tough catch. I think when he was taken down, he should have held on to it. But I think the defender probably, I thought they were going to review it and give a touchdown. I thought he caught it. And then as he was going down, the defender kind of jarred it loose.
It should have at least been reviewed.
I think if the one guy had overruled the other guy and said, no, it's a touchdown, I'm right on the spot, it would have been reviewed because it was a touchdown. And I think they would have kept it as a touchdown. I think the fact that it was given no touchdown meant it didn't go to review, and they just stuck with the call. But I was kind of sat there waiting, they're going to review this, they're going to review it. And they never did, which was surprising, which was like the pass interference against the Niners. I mean, the comparisons between that game are eerie. They should have reviewed the pass interference when you could review it last year. I think on Jacob Hollister, got blown off the line, didn't he, right at the end? But anyway, that's ancient history now. I think other positives for me, you mentioned KJ Wright, fantastic again. He's playing his way into contention for a new contract, which is, when this drafted Jordan Brooks, everyone's thinking, well, the writing's on the wall for KJ. He's actually playing the best of all the linebackers. I mean, certainly better than Bobby Wagner, who's on $18 million a year. I mean, KJ is really playing superbly. Great interception, great stuff on the 2-point conversion earlier on. I mean, little things like that mattered in the end, didn't they? I mean, that 2 points, huge in the grand scheme of things. So KJ, huge game. I think a positive, because there are going to be negatives that we're going to talk about with the defense. I think one of the positives with the defense is that despite the fact that they're clearly atrocious, they somehow keep making big plays, interceptions, turnovers, stops. This is 3 home games in a row now where they've come up huge stops at the end of games to either give the offense a chance to go and win or to win the game. And you know, there is something to be said for that, even if, you know, sort of minute 1 to 60, there's probably like 50 minutes of bad and 10 minutes, if that, of good. You know, it's really not, the defense isn't on the field for the whole game, but you get my point. You know, there's much more worse than it, but they do find a way to make plays. I thought the stop at the end, Cody Barton was dreadful again, but you know, fair play to him and Bobby Wagner at the end for combining to make that stop on 4th down. I'm trying to think if there's anything else really. I think that's pretty much it for positives.
I'll give you one more positive. Now that you said that, it's the interior defensive line. I mean, they got ran on a lot today, but as far as the push went, I felt like Monet had a great game. I felt like he was almost everywhere. Not only that, when they were, you know, getting the ball on the outside, I always felt like he was hauling butt to get out there to make a tackle or to at least be out there to help assist. And then, you know, Jaron Reed played a really good game as well, I felt like.
In terms of the negatives, quickly, and I don't want to linger on these too much, but we do it every week. You know, there's a long list here. I mean, this is basically what the game was, Robbie. It was that the Seahawks had 1 minute 49 seconds at the start of the second half where they were on top, and they had the final drive of the game. The whole entire rest of the game belonged to the Minnesota Vikings. They absolutely dominated the Seahawks. They smacked them around, dominated in the trenches. Russell Wilson had very little time and was anxious. Kirk Cousins was pressured a fair bit today, but actually stayed composed and outplayed Wilson until that final drive. You know, he was in standing tall, getting hit, delivering a football, keeping drives alive when he had to. When it was a 3rd down, he'd make a play. You know, and Wilson wasn't able to do that. But in the trenches, they were just smashed around. And the Vikings set a new record for drives with 10 or more plays involved. They had 31 first downs, 449 total yards. They had 40 minutes of time of possession. They ran for 201 yards. You know, for all these weeks, Robbie, people have been saying the Seahawks run defense is amazing. It's doing really well. And you know, I've kind of been saying it's a mirage because teams don't run on the Seahawks. You can throw for 430 yards a game. You don't need to run the ball. It's a mirage. Teams are running their running backs 10 or 15 times a game. Dalvin Cook had run, I think, 15 plus times in the first 2 drives that Minnesota had today. I mean, just have a look at you know, some of the stats. In terms of runs, they ran the ball 41 times. Mattison and Cook between them had 37 runs. This was the first time that anybody has challenged this Seahawks run defense. And they gave up 201 yards and still didn't do very much in the pass defense. I mean, the numbers were down because they didn't have to throw as much because they could run. And this is my issue, Robbie. You know, they gave up, what was it I said that they gave up in terms of yardage? It's 449 yards or something like that, 449 total yards. Now, it doesn't matter how you get to 450, 500 yards. The fact is that's what the Seahawks are giving up every game. So now they kind of just swap 200 passing yards for 200 running yards. That's on the defense. And it has taken a miracle tonight of a crazy minute 49 and an amazing MVP drive to avoid losing a game they had really going into it, were favourites to win, should have won. And this defense continues to be a major problem for those numbers and the way that they're playing. And I do fear, Robbie, that 5-0 is amazing and it really sets them up to go 13-3 and you know, in that kind of range and maybe even win the NFC West, although they play the Rams twice. my biggest fear is that they're going to come up against a team that's going to just do what Minnesota did today, and they ain't going to have an answer this time.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. But they could run into a team that does the exact same thing, and we do the exact same thing back to them. I mean, we've proven at least our defense have gotten the ability to make stops when it counts. At the end of the game, when they need to, they have proven that they can do that. So as long as they can continue to do that, that's what I'm going to go off of. So I really hope that's what happens. Some negatives for me, I'm going to go Brian Schottenheimer. That first half, I mean, I don't understand. Like, I was like, man, did Minnesota just figure out a new recipe to stop Russ? Like, what is happening? And all they were playing is two safeties high. I mean, and you can't, quit running things so deep or so short, run some mid-range stuff. And I don't feel like they were doing that at all. And granted, we only had like 3 possessions in the first half. Like, we touched the ball only 3 times or something. But I mean, that for me was a big negative. I'm really happy with the way he came out in the second half, and they attacked more, used their tight ends a little bit more, were able to be a little more aggressive and such. So happy that. But that first half with Brian Schottenheimer was awful for me. And then I know Ken Norton Jr. gets a lot of hate and a lot of he needs to be fired. We need to bring back Dan Quinn now because he got let go to. He's not going anywhere. All right. This is Pete's defense. I mean, at least not this year. Right. I mean, Ken might go away next year, but this is not the year. Like, we're not going to fire someone when we're 5-0 midway through the season. But I will say we're not done. Right. I mean, we brought in snacks. You saw, what was his name? Jonathan Bolliard come in and he actually played a couple snaps and even had a pressure. Although I will say, I thought he had a penalty when he got that pressure and almost got that sack. I think he hit Cousins in the helmet with his hands and can't do that. But negatives for me was definitely Schottenheimer, and then the defensive side of the ball. I really feel like Trey Flowers he's struggling a lot, and you feel like he was giving up a lot. And Cody Barton, I know he made some plays there at the end, but that guy should not be on the field. He's just not. He's not ready. He's not. And I think he led the team in tackles today with he had 14 tackles. He was tied with Bobby, but he had 9 solo. But still, he's not. He's getting pushed around, not in good position. I think he really struggled early on, and he stepped it up a little bit towards the end. But they need to bring someone in like Mikael Kendricks and get him back in, or try somebody else. I don't really care, but he's not working. Those are the really big negatives for me today.
On Barton, I wonder how many of those solo tackles were him sort of being driven to the ground by Dalvin Cook or Mattison, because it seemed to me that every time they ran towards Cody Barton, he seemed to get an extra 3 or 4 yards at the end of that. And he'd sort of just been going along for the ride. But I guess if the running back ends up on the floor, that's a tackle. But ultimately, he's really, really struggling. And, well played on the stop. You have to give him credit for the stop. He and Bobby Wagner combined on that. And without that, the Seahawks lose the game. But he's a liability. And you're right. I think Michael Kendricks can't possibly be as bad as this. And if Jordan Brooks can come back, great. But you just can't rely on him. We've seen enough. I think he's just not – it's not there. Whatever, there's just something missing. He looks athletic. He looks the part. There's just something not quite there with Cody Barton. Trey Flowers just looks devoid of confidence right now, to the point where you're wondering if there's somebody else who could – with the backup cornerbacks in his Quinton Dunbar does miss a lot of time and miss some time with cramps in this game. I think Schottenheimer, I was going to ask you this question when you brought that up. I thought it was interesting because in this game and the last game, both the Dolphins and the Vikings have had long drives, taken up a lot of clock. The Seahawks offense has not been on the field for long stretches of the game. I wondered whether or not, because of that, or at least anticipating that, they reined back some of the tempo. Whereas they thought, if we go up tempo after the defense has been on the field for 8 minutes and we go quick 3 and out and then we're off the field again, the defense is just going to be absolutely shattered straight away. Because I noticed in the last game there was a distinct lack of tempo, and there was hardly any today until they needed it to be. And I just wonder whether or not that was something they thought, we can't play with as much tempo because of that. Yet, one of the main reasons why they were so prolific in the first 3 games is because they played with so much tempo. They were quick, they were getting to the line, it was like, we'll throw in a 2-minute offense here in the middle of the first quarter. We're going to get on teams. You could see that opponents were struggling to get back to the line. The Seahawks are snapping again. Oh, they're trying to substitute. It was that sort of quickness, that sharpness, that constantly never letting a defense settle, which seemed to work so well with them. And then, what happens? You get blown coverages. You get things like Dallas letting DK and Tyler Lockett running downfield. You get things like Atlanta not really knowing what to do. You get things like the Patriots really struggling to keep up with Russell Wilson. And in these last 2 games, it just feels like everything's been a lot less quick. It's been more methodical. And do you know what the results? If you go 3 and out, you go 3 and out. And I kind of think, look, you didn't preserve the defense at all playing this way. If you have reined back the tempo, I don't know if they have or not. I'd like someone to ask that tomorrow. Actually, have you reined back the tempo in the last couple of games? Because to me, it feels like they have, Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly feels like it, and it looked like it too. I mean, the way that they were playing, and some of the play calling just seemed just odd. Like they ran back-to-back screen passes, like almost the same exact play that just got blown up. I didn't understand what they were doing there. Trying to force some things. Like I said, they weren't running mid-range very much on the receiver routes, and two deep safeties shouldn't buckle our offense in the first half. And I don't know if because they came down and scored a touchdown right away that we did rein it back and give our defense a little bit of a break, but it's not really how you play. You're not supposed to play scared, right? So you go out there and don't play scared football. Go play what you're good at and go do it. Don't hold back anything. That doesn't make any sense.
Minnesota Vikings are the best 1-4 team we've ever seen. I mean, it's just incredible, isn't it, that they're 1-4. I mean, the way that they played tonight, they should be right in the mix. I mean, when you think that the Bears 4-1, the Bears I think are 4-1, aren't they? And the Vikings are 1-4. I mean, that is just absolutely ridiculous. And I feel for the Vikings fans, and I feel a bit for Kirk Cousins, and I feel for that team because you have to take doff your cap and say they were brilliant tonight, and it was just sort of that crazy period at the start of the second half, and that one drive at the end, and that not failing to. They convert that 4th down. I'd written instant reaction, by the way. I'd had plenty of long drives to write in the second half, and it was a very different post-game feel until that stop and that final drive. I mean, if they run that in, this is a defeat that compares with the Saints, the Ravens, the Rams from last year, the Rams from 2017. Just an absolute shellacking. Just we're going to square up and hammer you in the trenches. Just men against boys in the trenches, beat you up, more physical, tougher. And, for large periods, I was just thinking, Robbie, this is bad defense showing up and costing them for once. Bad form at CenturyLink Field, again, showing up. They have too many games like this where they're bad at home. Russell Wilson playing badly in the rain. These things that we've talked about for a long time, they're all showing up, and that's what we would have been talking about if they'd have lost. They pull out this amazing drive, and we're all talking about 5-0 and it's a win, but those things still exist. And those things, they're going to have to, I think it's the perfect time for the bye, because there are so many things they need to work on. And yes, the players are going to need a rest. And yes, the players are going to need to leave the facility and go and chill out for a little bit, Robbie. Although you are quite limited in what you can do, obviously, in 2020. But there's so much work that is needed to get this team into a point where you think they could go toe-to-toe with this team again in the postseason, and it'd be a very different game. Or go toe-to-toe against Green Bay or the Rams or the Ravens. I dread to think what the Ravens offense would do to this defense. And like I say, Seattle can beat anybody as long as Russell Wilson plays well. If Russell Wilson plays like this, they look like a pretty horrible team.
Again, the bright side of all of this, right, is that they're not done on the defensive side of the ball adding pieces, right? And so, we talk about the run game and then how they saw it. They obviously saw that the run game wasn't going to be great. They went out and got Snacks Harrison, who I know he's the name. People know him, but what does he do? He stops the run. He's a big-bodied nose tackle guy. Get in and he can help stop the run. I'm not saying he's the savior of the defense, but he will be a good run stopping piece. You add him to the mix. You adding pieces to the mix to help with the run. So bringing him in will be helpful. You give, Jamal Adams another week. Now you get the bye, and then, maybe give him, 3 or 4 days more rest of time to kind of heal, get him back, get some of the other guys back. And then, the trade deadline's coming up, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the bye. So, it's coming up quickly. There's going to be something that's got to happen. So we're not done adding pieces. We keep bringing people in. You're seeing different people who have been sitting out on the street contributing already. Bulliard is another guy that, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he's another guy. Bullard. Thank you. It's Bulliard. Bullard. Yeah,
you're kind of giving him a flair that he doesn't perhaps warrant. As Jonathan Bullard is quite a plain name. Bulliard. So he makes him sound like a French chef.
Bullard. All right. Well, you bring in guys like that. That's what I'm saying. They're not done adding pieces, right? So they're bringing guys in, they're trying guys out, they're plugging them in, see how it's worked. This isn't a complete set. This isn't what we're rolling with for the rest of the season. So there's some positives to that. Another negative I will go with that I forgot about that I wanted to mention is the lime green uniforms, or the action green uniforms are still horrible, and I will take that to the bank. I freaking hate those uniforms. So that is still a negative in my opinion. I also thought Chris Collinsworth was terrible tonight. I don't think any player got more amped up that Dalvin Cook got injured. I thought that was a horrible thing to say, and I don't think any player actually thinks that. I think they probably felt bad that the guy got hurt. I don't think they played better because they're like, oh, now he's out, we can actually try or something. I thought that was just ridiculous.
My least favorite Collinsworth moment was right at the start when he went, well, you know what they say in Seattle, they say, let Russ cook. Well, you know where I'm going with this. In Minnesota, they say, let Dalvin Cook. And it's like, oh, for God's sake, could you have set that up? You basically sent an email to everybody last week saying that the punchline was coming. It was that obvious where you were going with it. And then you should have just said, let Dalvin cook. You didn't have to say it twice. So terrible. But nevertheless, I sort of finish with this. Watching that, Robbie, and that was quite. You're watching it, and into the emotions. For me, that was a hopeful sort of emotion at the end. That's kind of what I was like. Please score a touchdown was kind of like what was going on in my head. I gave up a couple of times on the drive. In the got a 4th and 10. I pretty much resigned that it wasn't going to happen. And then when they got to 4th down in the red zone, I was again thinking, it's going to be just like the Niners game. It was hopeful. It just made me sort of think back to how I felt in some of the other close games. So when they won in the NFC Championship against the Niners, I wasn't worried at all. How did you feel watching that? Because I wasn't worried at all when Kaepernick. I just thought someone is going to make a play at some point. And even as they've got to as close as they did to the end zone, and even with that clock ticking down, so you think there's no time if they don't stop them here. I was just convinced in my own. I was very much at peace with. I was just kind of waiting for someone to make way. I don't know why I felt as confident as I did, because I never felt that way before, because when they beat the Rams on Monday Night Football earlier that season, it was like, oh, they're not going to do it. They're going to lose. They're going to lose to the Rams. Oh, my God, it's terrible. They're going to lose this terrible Rams team. And then they won. It was like, phew. But against the Niners in the NFC Championship, it was just like, yep, there's the play. It's happened. And I find it weird how I don't know if you're consistently feeling the same way at the end of these games, but I kind of felt a little bit different every time.
I don't know. I'm always nervous. I'm a nervous wreck. And I remember being at that NFC Championship game and being a total disaster when they were driving the ball down, and, he made a play that previously Chancellor had picked off and it went right over his head, and Crabtree was running down the sideline, and I was like, oh no, don't let him score. Just don't let him score. And yeah, I'm a mess every time. So I can't really say that. I get real heated, and, the Irish comes out in me, I get a little pissed off, and, whatever it might be. But I just I'm always the same, man. I don't really know about that, but I can say a positive, man, is like the Dolphins aren't as bad as they seem. They whooped up on the 49ers today. So I thought about that as you were saying, people were probably saying, well, Miami's not a very good football team, but hey, they played pretty good. And I know that, the Niners are still injured, but they got their quarterback back. They, their running backs back. They had a lot of players coming back, and they got thumped today. So that's a good sign for us.
That really is the cherry on the top of the Sunday night football cake there, Robbie. That just imagine all those Niners fans who were sat there, they've watched their team get absolutely hammered by the Dolphins at home, and they're thinking, the Seahawks are going to lose, and they've won right at the end. And how that double whammy, that sucker punch right at the end for all those Niners fans. that Seattle won. Quick shout out to the lucky ball. Came out at half time, changed the game. So congratulations to the lucky ball. I also I was sat somewhere, changed seats at half time. Robbie, you're pointing at your hat. Did you change the hat?
I changed my hat. Yeah, I was wearing a beanie, and at halftime, I was like, nope. Threw it off, and I was like, they're wearing action green. I guess I better wear a green hat. So I did that.
If someone said to me, "Are you a superstitious person?" I would say no. Yeah, I have a lucky ball, and I changed seats during a football game. So there we go. Right, it's the bye week. I'm assuming we will do a podcast during the bye week at some point and review where the Seahawks are and the state of play and go through a lot of different topics. But for now, the Seahawks are 5-0. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and spread the message. More analysis on SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.